we're breaking up with weight, we're breaking up with weight loss. Those are like, it's a totally unhelpful marker, and your total weight and weight loss is like just a dumb goal. But I think that one of the things that we also have to break up with is the acquisition of knowledge around nutrition does not directly or even it may correlate to less health as opposed to more health.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Houghton. My guest today is Ashley Koff, a registered dietitian, founder of the Better Nutrition Program, and author of the upcoming book, Your Best Shot. She joins me to talk about her revolutionary approach to weight loss in women over 35, including novel treatments like Ozempic and Mounjaro. But most importantly, she shares why the traditional weight loss model has been failing women for years. If you are a woman who never had quote unquote weight issues until you were in your 30s or 40s and can't figure out how to get back to your pre-mom weight, you'll want to listen to this episode. Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Julie.
I am so excited for this conversation that I will confess I just had to make myself stop chatting and hit record. Listeners could enjoy it as well. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
So
Thank
amazing.
you.
I would love, we're going to dig into the book, but I would love for listeners to get to know you a little bit because I'm guessing you get often surprised that I get when people realize that you were not plunked down on this earth, to help everybody figure it out, right? Or you were, but you weren't, you didn't feel this way, you didn't look this way, you didn't know these things. So share your journey with us, because I really feel like everybody listening is going to be like, yes, I can relate to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I remember living with a woman, one of my friends from college, right after college, like in San Francisco, and she was a third or a fourth grade teacher. And I remember having this moment one day where I was like, was in awe. Like, she'd gone out to like a rave the night before, like woke up maybe after 2 hours sleep, whatever. She's an awesome, awesome teacher. But I was like, I think like, imagine what your students would think if like they knew that like you have a life. And so I that's what I think you're saying. It's like, sometimes people are like, oh, like you're a dietitian, like your favorite food's broccoli, like, which legitimately it is, but there's a funny story to that. But I also love chocolate and I love cheese and et cetera.
Right.
But yeah, I was a weight hot mess. Like, and let me be clear, when I could use I presently don't feel that way, but certainly in my youth and then perimenopause, and with all the tools. And I think honestly, there was probably more angst about that in the perimenopause time period, just because I was also like, wait, I'm like this 20+ year practitioner and like I got all these tools. So we'll talk through all of that. But I think, so Your Best Shot, the name of my book, was actually written because I believe we're all here on this planet in this moment at this time to fulfill a purpose. Like, I'm very, like, maybe that's woo, maybe it's whatever, but who am I and why am I here? And we can't fulfill our life purpose when we're battling against our body, or when we feel disempowered, or when we have that moment where we're like, hey, I'm trying all these things. I'm investing my resources, time, money, hope, and it's not playing out the way that like the investment, I'm not seeing the ROI. And that's certainly my story. But I also know that that is every patient's story. That's every person that I've interacted with. When they found out, like for a blip of a moment, when they found out what I do, they're like, wait, I feel like I'm derailed from what I want to be doing, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I love that. That so aligns with actually the mission at the clinic, is why we do what we do, right? When we can be our best selves when we're at our healthiest. And I want to talk about that kind of correlation between, because I think so many people have that journey of, it's the weight, and I
Yeah.
know you were also told, eat less, right? Like,
Yeah. Everything, everything.
all of that misinformation, but it, for especially for women, I'll even say like 50 and above, although I actually am seeing
Oh my
we
gosh,
have
I'd say 35 and above, but it
yeah.
also depends, it could be a 28-year-old who's in medically induced, on that part. But I think like what I want to double click on what you said is something really important. We've been and I say been because I'm going to put it in the past tense because I believe together we can put it in the past tense. But we have been a weight versus health society. So like we've had all of these things about our health, and then we've had our weight, and we've had our weight as BMI, like body mass index. We've had our weight as, a total number on the scale. We've had our weight based on your pant size or your appearance. And we've been told to manage our weight, and we've been told to lose our weight. And we've been told that our weight maybe even like is something of like how we should be valued. And it dictates who gets healthcare and what kind of healthcare and at what cost. And all of these things are over in this weight bucket. And the body isn't like that. The body is an operating system where our weight composition, our bone, our muscle, our fat, our water, is a key performance indicator of our overall health. And so it's one of them, like it's one signal or a set of signals. We really have to pay attention to those. But I think that's really important, on that part. So what I would say in that space for me was that the first, I would say up to about age 8, my weight wasn't a problem. It was, here I was out there. I had a belly, but I was always considered healthy. And every single month or couple of months when I had an ear infection or a throat infection, I was just given antibiotics, and you get over that and you move on. But then from sort of 8 to 20, 22, my weight was like societally an issue. I was bullied. I had an 8-year-old kid punch me in my belly and tell me I'm fat. And I was like, wait a second. Like, how are you telling me I have a weakness? Like, I'm strong. Like, I'm awesome. Like, I was very empowered.
That's
And then
great.
suddenly the disempowerment started, right? And the world tees up. I was lucky or not lucky to be in a medical family. And so as a result, you see doctors, and doctors were like, you just need to eat less. You need to stop eating when you're full. And I was like, well, okay, legitimately, I don't feel full. So that's great. Like, I'll keep eating the amount of pizza that I want, or whatever.
Right.
And then when the doctor stuff doesn't work, then you're like, well, there's the diet industry. And for me, that was, Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig. And Weight Watchers, you go in, literally you stand outside the door. Mom drops you off. You stand outside the door. You go in, you get on the scale with women of all different ages. There were no men there. And you were either high-fived and hugged, or you were told to sit down. And it was like, if your weight changed, like you were on the program. If your weight didn't change, and like, God forbid, like you gained weight, like God forbid it was the day of your period or the day before, or, maybe you had muscle, had gained muscle. And then I think you move from there
And there's an ice
to,
cream store next
oh,
door.
that's right. Yeah. And then, and like Jenny Craig, not delicious food. Like I haven't tried it in years,
It's not
like,
food.
and not, I mean, who, like, all of these different things. Right. And I think then, you go to college, and for me, college was an exposure to, well, I could binge drink, and I could, and kind of like any day of the week, any hour of the day. I think it's a little bit better today, I hope. But I also had my first interactions, probably because I was living with other people, to true eating disorders. I tried, bulimia. I tried anorexia. I tried
I'm glad
exercise
they didn't
anorexia.
stick.
Right. But, I saw them as a failure. Like I saw myself as
You're
like,
not a
as
good
me as a
bulimic.
failure because I'm not a good bulimic. Right. And,
God.
you look at all of those pieces. And so it wasn't really until and then you get into like the world of cleanses and crazy stuff. And that's what I did, in New York. And it wasn't until all of that was falling apart for me, and I had panic attacks, and I had skin issues for the first time in my life. I literally had my digestive issues had gotten so bad while I was a macrobiotic vegan who didn't drink alcohol and went to yoga twice a day as a 20-year-old living in New York. So if somebody wants to call me non-compliant, like they get my middle finger. Like I had tried everything under the sun. And a physician said to me, I randomly in a bar, no joke, met a physician. He was eating a burger. I was drinking tequila. I had gone back to drinking because I was like, screw it. I'm going to be a fat
It's the
Canadian who
healthiest of
drinks.
the
Yeah, I was like,
alcohols.
I'm done. And and he said to me, when I went to see him, he said to me, it's not what you're eating or not eating. It's that your body doesn't have what it needs to run better. And I think that's like, so like, it was like this, moment. And that was my personal aha moment that helped me shift to an empowered way of viewing my body, of understanding. And at that moment, I learned for the first time that our digestion is actually the ruler of our ecosystem, right? It would take me a little longer to like sort of understand the ecosystem. I do want to just acknowledge I'm hearing your keyboard a lot, like, so I don't
Thank
know.
you.
Yeah, just want to shout that out. So I think on that part, I'm also one of those. I have such bad like attention issues. Like I'll get distracted. I know. I go like, so I think in that space, when we look at that, we understand that our digestion, like to date, like we still give so much credit to food as a healthy food or a not healthy food, like salmon or ice cream or any of these things. But at the end of the day, like it's really what our body can use and when it gets where it's supposed to go. And I think that like so much of the messaging hasn't been helpful. And so that really spurred for me this, not just a career change, not just a, hey, I think my life's purpose is I'm meant to help people like not go through what I went through.
Yeah.
And as I became a practitioner, one of the first places I was working was with bariatric patients. It was very new. It was like 2003, 4 in Los Angeles at Cedars-Sinai. And I remember after like a handful of patients saying to a doctor, like, this is insane. Like their diabetes is going away like overnight and they feel full. Like I still, struggle sometimes to feel full. And he said, oh, it's these incretin hormones. It's GLP-1, it's GIP. And I was like, stop. What do I not know about? I was like, what is a GLP-1 or a GIP? And that actually led me to understand. And at that point, I started referring to them and thinking about them as weight health hormones that reside in our gut. So I now understood why mine weren't working better. So kind of at that point, around that time period, the pharmaceutical world was discovering what would ultimately become our agonists, our GLP-1 agonist medications and going down that path and realizing we could create essentially biosimilar hormone replacement therapy. And I was going down the path of what if I could repair? What if I could first identify if yours aren't working, but what if I could use food and nutrition and lifestyle choices and supplements and medications and like all the different tools to actually repair our weight health hormones? And that's like kind of all converged into Your Best Shot because we have the toolkit of the shots and now the oral medications as of yesterday. And we also have all these other things and protocols and a personalized plan. So whether you're going to use the shot at any point in time, I don't have a crystal ball about your life, but whether you're going to use a hormone replacement therapy for your weight health hormones or not, we all need optimally functioning weight hormones. And that for me, so I feel like even more so like today, this world where I'm supposed to be, I'm like, whoa, like this is it, because I was like, wait a second, all that personal pain and like, different trials and errors, but also, certainly my work as a practitioner has led me to this moment. So thanks for letting me walk through that with you. Yeah.
Amazing. And
Thank you.
I've heard you say, and then I want to back up and talk about those hormones a little bit because we talk about hormones a lot on the podcast, but not these hormones.
Yeah.
And I think probably even for listeners, educational as far as, when they hear GLP-1, like this is not a foreign substance. So
Right.
I want to get into that a little bit.
Thank you.
But what I've heard you say, which is where I just, like got my girl crush, was when you were like, these are tools.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and this has been, I have everybody at the clinic will roll their eyes when they hear this because it's not, use these tools and don't make any other changes. Like that is not, that's not the point. The point is, like you said, the identify, repair, so we can heal. But it is amazing. It can be amazing to have the tools so that we can learn the new tricks and create the new lifestyle and create the habits. So we're allowed to curse on the podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was really excited when I saw the chapter in your book.
Shit to unlearn, right?
Shit to unlearn.
Yes.
That's what when I was referencing women in their 50s and up, is what I was starting to say was we have decades of that kind of diet Weight Watchers mentality to unwind.
Yeah, we do.
And do you see a lot this connection with perfectionism
Hmm.
because it is that kind of, like you said, you either get a hug or you have to go sit down. Especially my mature ladies, it's the learning to be imperfect
Yeah.
is the hard part. And that's that's where I think where the sustainability comes from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have so many things I want to talk about, but let's talk about those hormones a little bit. We don't need a deep dive science lesson, but and if you have an opinion, I'm sure you have an opinion, but why is this so prevalent? Like, this is
Yeah.
an epidemic.
I
Why?
love that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And we could like have an entire
I
conversation
know.
just about perfection, but we'll come
Mhm.
back to that. So, okay. So our body makes two different types of hormones. We make steroid hormones and we make peptide hormones. So steroid hormones are going to think of your sex hormones, insulin, any of these others, and they're made from fats and they require an extra step also in elimination to be converted into a form where they can be eliminated. Thus, we have a detoxification system. So that'll be important at a later point for us to think about. But obviously, then the fats that we consume and the fats that the body has available are going to be very important for our body's ability to make those hormones. These hormones are peptide hormones. So they are made from amino acids. So similarly, the protein and the amino acids that we take in, or the body's ability to break down proteins into amino acids and turn them into these peptide chains, that's going to be really important, right? So one of the things we can automatically be thinking about is insufficient protein, or or maybe we're mono eating protein if we're getting the same types in all the time, or missing amino acids, or maybe we have genetic inefficiencies where we just don't, bring these together as well. Like that's going to be a real factor. There are a variety: GLP-1, GLP-2, CCK, PYY, amylin, GIP. I actually just posted on my Instagram, I think, and in a couple of other places today about, so I can always go back and reference that. But the Lancet actually just did an entire overview of all of these hormones as it relates to each of the drugs that are coming out. Like, because
Mhm.
basically now they're realizing we can agonist. So I also want to double click on that.
Yes,
An
thank you.
agonist is actually a medication that is intended to work the way your body works. An antagonist, maybe think of a statin, or think of a proton pump inhibitor, something that blocks or challenges the way the body is currently operating so that you get a different outcome in that part. Maybe like a pain medication or something that's turning off inflammation, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So when we look at an agonist, it means that it's designed to basically work or encourage the body to work the way that it does. So the other piece about hormones is that we want to understand that hormones are communication vessels in the body. So their job is to tell other things to go to work, other hormones to go to work, other neurotransmitters to go to work, maybe to tell something to move along in a system, et cetera, on that part. So one of the things to understand about why I call these weight health hormones, and I do not call them weight loss hormones or
What?
appetite hormones or blood sugar hormones, is we actually have blood sugar hormones and we actually have appetite, hunger, satiety, fullness hormones. We have stress hormones like cortisol. We have sex hormones, which I think like kind of diminishes their role, but we could talk, think about estrogen, testosterone. I mean, we have vitamin D is a hormone. So you could look at hormone replacement therapy as taking a vitamin D supplement,
Sure.
to optimize, right? So when we think about these as weight health hormones, part of the reason I want us to understand all of those is they do things such as regulating hydration, regulating bone, regulating fat, not just the type of fat, but where we allocate fat. They're implicated in muscle. They have receptor sites, which means where they activate and where they tell something else to go to work in the lining of our blood vessels. So when we think about blood pressure, when we think about arterial plaque, when we think about some of the big cardiometabolic or cardiovascular risk factors, when we think about cognitive function, they're not just on our taste buds. They're not just in our brain telling us to not have appetite. They're in our brain really around the whole activity of like how we stress about things like
Yeah.
obsessive thoughts, or even around addiction. They actually are inside of past the blood-brain barrier as a neurotransmitter acting a little bit differently. So we are talking about something that is having impact in all of your body. So why is there suboptimal function today? Well, number one, I talked about it. We might not get in enough, an optimal level, an optimal amount of nutrients. And so if the body has a choice and it's going to say, well, I only got this amount of protein, and it might be like, ooh, I need to repair the heart muscle today. And it may not decide to go ahead and make a GLP-1, and hormone or something else. And it definitely may not to decide to help you make hair or skin and nails that look and feel the way that you want them to. So when we look at this, we're really talking about an optimal amount. So the secondary part is their signalers are everywhere from in our mouth to in our brain, our sight, our smell, like all of our senses. And then those signals are also, and in some of the food, that we're taking in, are the signals go by way of from the brain to the gut via the vagus nerve. So that nerve is then coming in and sending messages, on that part, right? So that's going to happen. And by the way, I'm going to be out of breath before I tell you, and there's no quiz on this part. So then what happens is in the gut, like when it gets there, the signal is supposed to be received, and you're supposed to have the right critters who have eaten their polyphenols and who are in there chewing up the mucin and are producing things called short chain fatty acids, which then knock on the doors of L cells and K cells and go tell those to deploy these weight health hormones. So then those weight health hormones are supposed to be like, cool, I'm ready to go. And now I'm going to go into the bloodstream, or I'm going to go back by the vagus nerve, and I'm going to get wherever I'm supposed to go. And I'm going to be able to, okay, I'm already out of breath, right? They have to get to receptor sites, and they have to do that. So the other kicker is our own are designed to work for about 2 to 5 minutes. Some of them work for maybe a little bit longer, like maybe an hour. These are motion detectors, right? Yeah. They are motion detectors. Then in pre-industrialization, when there was not all of these different challenges to our body of like too many messages or too much stuff going in front of the motion detector. Like I like to say, it's like there's a stampede going in front of our motion detector, right? Instead of like, one message here or there. There's also our vagus nerve and our bloodstream, the deployment, the reception and deployment pathways have all sorts of damage. They're like highways that like maybe there's a mudslide, maybe part of it's closed, like maybe they need repair. Maybe there's just too much going on. Maybe you got sugar in the blood. Maybe you don't have enough water in there. Maybe you have other, plaque that's making the highway like into a single lane. Like we have all of these different things. And then you get to the receptor sites and you may have receptor site damage where they're just not like, or they've been inactive, like, and they're just like, this isn't. So there are all of these different factors that are at play there, right? And that's before we even get into how is your actual digestion doing, which is going to be about like whether or not you're going to get the ingredients that then your body can actually use and on that part. So when we look at that, what I would like to say is I don't think there's anything about the human body that is anything other than absolutely brilliant design. Yes. Like that's why I hate messages like don't stress, like duh, like we're designed with a stress response. Right. Like it's brilliant. But I do think that the human body wasn't designed for today. And I think that's like one of those things. And we've created all these other solutions for things that we don't need. Like we did not need a vehicle to be able to not have to get up off the couch and go through 100 different channels. Like we didn't need a clicker like that. I mean, maybe a few people do. I don't want to discount that that's made TV accessible for someone who can't move. Well, but I want to be clear, like that's not something. But when we look at this, we do need solutions and we need the tools that are going to be able to help our body compete more effectively in modern day. And weight health hormone optimization, when there is suboptimal function indicated, that is your solution. That's what we need to be doing. Whether we use a medication as a tool, whether we use supplements, whether we use food, whether we use lifestyle, like all the other pieces. So that's sort of the roundabout about the hormones and, sort of how to think about them. And then to also just sort of understand why there's such a prevalence. I will give you a statistic. 9 out of 10 Americans before COVID did not meet the criteria, the very basic, I think 2 basic criteria for metabolic health, for being metabolically healthy. So let's call it 9 in 10 of us, right? Post-COVID, I don't think any of us got more metabolically healthy, or the majority of us. So I'm willing to say it's 9 out of 10 of us that are, and at some point in your life, whether because of menopause or because of, anything like of, even training for an Ironman, like whatever it is that you're doing, you're going to experience suboptimal weight health hormone function. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you highlight that. And the reason we're here having this conversation, that I kind of thought I knew what you were going to say. It's, the autoimmune numbers are, and when I was diagnosed with autoimmunity, back in my early 30s, even then, like even the rheumatologist was like, I'm sorry, you're so young,
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh my gosh, if you make it to your 30s without a diagnosis,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So these are, it's because we are these brilliant, we have these brilliant systems and our bodies are miraculous.
Yeah.
But they weren't. I totally
Yeah.
agree. We're not designed for today's life. And so I love that you
In
said that.
so
And
many ways. In
yeah,
so many ways. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
almost all the ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which doesn't mean I'm not being doom or gloom. Like it just means we
No,
have to be intentional
that's right. That's right.
to help, get in touch, do the things, be in nature. We
Well, I
talk all
think
the time about we can't digest our food if we don't have vagal tone, right?
right.
So the eating on the go or this may be a trigger warning for you for, if you eat standing up, it doesn't count, like all just that, like you said, it's not about stress isn't bad or good. It's just this chronic state that we're in. I love the stampede. I talk about the TV fuzz. Like
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
so much input. Which I know now we don't even have fuzzy TC. We don't even have to get
That's
up
it.
to adjust the antenna
Yeah.
either. So
Mm. Yeah, I walked into somebody walking down the street in Manhattan yesterday because or rather she walked into me, but, she was on her phone watching a TV show, and I was
oh
like,
my
"Wow,"
gosh,
or a video like a video TV, whatever.
something.
But
Yeah.
you sit on that part and you're like, "Oh, yeah." Like, that's like, so that,
That's
like,
it.
we have to, sort of, like, think about it that in those moments. But I think what, so number one, I think our colleague, Dr. Jeff Bland,
Love
who,
him.
has done such incredible work, he's really doing a lot of work right now to reimagine our understanding of immunity, because I think we've thought about this, like, immunity in this very, like, which it's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy. The foundation of immunity, like, and thinking about it as like we need to defend the body, right? The body needs to have this defense system. But when we really think about what immunity is, and think of it in like a more global sense, I think we understand why there's the prevalence of autoimmunity. If the body is an operating system, any time that something there's suboptimal function, I think of like the old Laverne and Shirley days, like where you would remember the opening credits, and you would see them in the big I think it was like a milk
Bottling
processing bottle,
factory.
some
Yeah.
kind of bottling
Yeah.
plant, right? And if we think about like any of those manufacturing plants or whatever, like, or even where a car would be designed, like each of the pieces needs to go on, it needs to go on at the right time. But if any aspect of that operating system isn't working better, like things flail, like and they all over, right? And I think what's happening with autoimmunity is that the operating system is one of several things. It's suboptimally resourced. So it's basically saying like, wait, and not everybody who needs a nail has a nail, like, and that's a problem, right? So somebody's trying to like tape something together, or somebody's trying to like glue something, or they're sticking, trying to like see if it could just shove it really tightly together. Like all of these different things on that part. And then the actual operational part, i.e., our digestion and deployment, that may like just be like, have breaks in it, tears in it, not be working, like have days where it's, or sometimes be like working all the time and be like, wait a second, like I need this to, turn off. So I think when we start to look at that, autoimmunity is really the modern disease of like a diagnosis of the operating system has suboptimal function and how and where, and we need to look at that in totality. So why am I talking about that? Because one of the most exciting things about GLP-1 agonists is, and it's like I think so cool, is it's actually showing all of us how our body is working, right? Like the fact that there's an agonist for each of these medications, I can now actually have a conversation with a practitioner and a patient about CCK or PYY or amylin or, anything. But also, more importantly than that, we're having these moments, especially in rheumatology, where people are just like, doctors have said to me, they're like, I don't get how this could be working at all, but it is working, right? And I'm like, okay, well, if it's working, like I actually do get how it's working. So let me explain, like let me come in, like, and not in a like I know more than you, but just like I have geeked out on this for so long,
Right.
and here's this piece. And the real question is, does the patient who is dealing with their, whether it's pain or whether it's skin issue, however the autoimmunity is presenting, does the patient benefit from low dose, higher dose, short term, long term, like all of these different things? Well, we can personalize that. But here's what I think is the most important thing is that a patient will never benefit from using the medication if you don't address the operating system.
Right.
And I think that so whether it's the lead into addressing the operating system or whether it's the coming back and, moving on that part, I think that part is so key. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, and you said it, but I'm going to highlight it again. Like,
Mhm.
it's the gut, people. It's the gut. I was thinking when you were sharing, about a bit about your journey,
Mhm.
this interesting, and that's why I love that you talk about weight health, right? So
Mhm.
I was on the other side of that
Mhm.
spectrum. I was a very slender individual. I
Mhm.
came from a slender family,
So of
but
course you've never had a health issue in your life because you were
no, not at
yeah.
all. And so I was, like, to
Yeah.
me, and I'm purposely not using the word. I was called, skinny. I was told,
Skinny.
you're
Yeah.
too skinny. You're
Yes.
too skinny. Don't you eat?
Yes.
You're too skinny. You're too skinny.
And
Well,
told to just eat anything, right? Like that was
and
the other
so
yeah.
it's the, if you don't get to the why, right? I did not have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
I ate, perfectly. I actually ate probably because there were times where I had too many people trying to feed me,
Yes.
to fatten me up. I
Yeah.
had you'll get a kick out of this one. My dad, God bless him. My family was in the dairy business.
Mm.
Listeners know because cow dairy is not my friend.
Yeah.
Um but we went through a phase where my dad would make me a milkshake every day with raw eggs in it, and he was just trying,
Yeah.
right? Now, and he was this big around, but
Yeah.
for some reason, and so
And by the way, being this big and we're holding up our pinkies
yeah,
doesn't matter. He could have been like had the worst dysfunction inside
he
of
died at
him. You know what I mean?
54.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I'm so sorry.
yeah,
Yes. Okay.
like
Okay.
it's,
Yeah.
and that's the point, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's why I love weight health,
Yes.
because but nobody asked why.
Hmm.
In hindsight, now I get
Hmm.
it. Like, celiac, but I
Yeah.
didn't know I wasn't absorbing nutrients. Didn't matter how many
Right.
milkshakes you were going to pour down me.
That's right.
I wasn't
That's
absorbing them.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
S- But it's that same with the autoimmunity, with the, and that was a frustration as I was fired from rheumatology
Mm.
because I was healthy.
Yeah.
Nobody asked, like, what did I do
Yeah.
differently that the 10 years of medications didn't do for me? And it was, well, I
Hmm.
addressed,
Hmm.
my health. And I do remember you were ahead of me in the curve. Probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. I was like, really? The gut again? The gut is really the gut?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait.
Which, by the way, the gut is the mouth, it's the skin, it's the so like that's the like the when I think even more enter like the microbiome conversation and just understanding all of these critters. My brother's a researcher with macrophages, and it's like when we start to understand like pond scum and thinking like literally that's what macro
Yeah.
and they by the way, they will save all of our lives someday because there's so much antibiotic resistance and all of
Oh,
that. But when we understand that a pond intentionally has scum because the variety and the personalization of the scum is what actually keeps everything else alive.
yeah.
It's like when we come into that and we look at, and one of the reasons, so in my book, I share and I created out of my work, the first ever, it literally doesn't exist. It is a clinical assessment. So I want to double click on that. This is not one of those quizzes that you take and you find out you're an 8 and you're like, yeah, I'm going to live my life this way. And, here's my difficulty with 7s, or whatever. But like from a clinical standpoint, we have to go through and we have to assess this. And that's why I want to ask questions. I'm asking questions about, I want you or somebody who's going to be honest with you to tell you how your breath is, or do you have
Mm.
changes in your body odor, or I want you to look at your poop, or I want you to drink water and tell me how quickly you pee it out. I want you to assess your breathing. Like I want you to do something called a Bolt score or understand your pulse or look at your heart rate variability. We have to like inquire. So we actually don't have to get any more information. Like we don't need to learn more about a carbohydrate or more about anything. If you want
It's
to, great,
us.
fine. But we have to get the insights about us. Yeah. And we need
Yes.
to on a regular basis. I also think we have to break up with, I have a lot of breaking up with, like we're breaking up with weight, we're breaking up with weight loss. Those are it's a totally unhelpful marker and your total weight and weight loss is like just a dumb goal. But I think that one of the things that we also have to break up with is the acquisition of knowledge around nutrition does not directly or even it may correlate to less health as opposed to more health, on that
I
part.
love your
That's key. The infobesity.
infobesity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
It's true. It's back to the stampede, right? Like
Yeah.
it's overload.
It is.
And, like you mentioned with earlier, if, that fad diet didn't help, the cleanse isn't going to help either. And the
Right.
cleanses make me cringe anyway. But
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. I think there's no better example. Like I remember Beyonce's, master cleanse, and I talk about in my book how I did a 7-day goat's milk only cleanse. Oh, dear Lord. Yeah.
you lost weight, right?
It worked. Oh, it worked. I literally was like thinking about, like, I love food, but at this point I was a macrobiotic vegan who had like started eliminating more and more. Like I hated food at that point. But I was like, ooh, I wonder if I'm actually just this weird alien that should exist on goat's milk. Cause I feel like so good on goat. Yeah, exactly. I was like, ooh, yeah, like maybe on that part. But, when it didn't work, I think one of the key things is that when we again come back to this conversation about optimally resourcing a body, any cleanse that's out there that doesn't actually break, like the cleanse should actually be, I want you to have more stuff than you've ever had, but it's going to be all the things that helps your body run better, right? Like instead cleanses are like, lemon and maple syrup and water, or like, even, and by the way, there's intentional tools like fasting mimicking or any of these other, or like
I'm not talking
a
about
24-hour, whatever. But the idea that cleansing is like some bar of soap that you rub on you and you're like, oh, like,
good for
at,
you.
yeah. It's, oh man. And I've sold quite a few of those cleanses, and I've turned around to people being like, in the way of like the better cleanses, but I've turned around to people and had to say like, you asked me for this. I've designed cleanses to be like, it's all included on this stuff. And sometimes it's also, I want to be clear, this is why I'm recommending supplements, because you're not going to get this in from your food, or right now your digestive system doesn't. So and people are like, whoa, this is insane. This is so much stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like that's actually what your body. So when we talk about things, like one of the pillars of better nutrition that I talk about in the book is actually looking at timing and not necessarily condensing our caloric and our activity window down to like 2, 4, or 10 hours. Because you have to be able to give your body all of that. And you also have to do it in a way that you're not like, imagine if your boss came in at 4:45 and you're in a 9 to 5 job, and at 5 o'clock, you're like ready to go. And you have all these other things on your to-do list, for after that. And at 4:45, he or she gives you a day's worth of work. Like middle finger, I'm going to like try to get through something. I'm going to throw stuff, whatever, like all this other stuff or I'm going to stay and work later, and then my other stuff doesn't get done. And what we end up doing a lot of time, from this timing standpoint is, and what's one of my greatest concerns about fasting for women is that when we ask the body to do more at one time, we all know as women what happens when we're asked to do more than we can handle at one time. Like we're not better off, and our bodies are not better off. So we need to be nicer to ourselves. We need to be nicer to our bodies and have better plans in that way. Yeah.
I love that. And I know you talk about in the book, individualized. I practiced intermittent fasting. Maybe it's because I had so many people shoving food at me as a kid.
Like 1-minute practice rebellion and the name intermittent fasting, right? Yes, yeah.
But for me, I grew up very healthy, fat deprived was a big part of that. Celiac and my inability to efficiently detox, say that way, became a perfect storm. And add to it stress and the things, right? And so I was keto for what I would call healthy.
I feel like I need to get myself back to the fat place. Yeah,
real,
I need that in a good way.
I was gagging on it in the beginning because I understood the science, and I knew it was good. I just had to reprogram. But intermittent fasting was great for me. And I got to there was a point where I thought I felt best with one meal a day.
We call that OMAD. Yes. OMAD.
OMAD. Oh my.
Yes.
I muscle wasted.
Yeah.
You can't eat enough protein in one meal.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
You just can't.
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
Metabolic pissed is the opposite of metabolic healthy. And that's, we have a
yes.
lot of metabolically pissed bodies. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and some of it is that what people have been told for decades. Well,
Hmm.
eat
Hmm.
less or
Yeah.
exercise more, or and so I wanted to touch on that. I heard you talk about, and I know we're getting close on time, but
Mhm.
I just there's so many things. I have hours of things that are so
Okay.
important for people.
We'll
So
keep doing this.
really,
Yeah.
listeners, get the book, get
I
the book,
think.
get the book. But you talk about deliciousness
Mm.
and the importance of that, and I just so applaud you, and people need to hear this, and they need
Thank
to
you.
understand.
Thanks. Yeah. I think there's probably nothing worse that has been done to us in the name of weight, and quite honestly, in the name of addressing health issues,
Yeah.
right? Because we have these eat this, not that's, and like all this other stuff. We have made our food so undelicious, and there's
Yes.
three things that happens there. Number one, our body is designed with a delicious profiling system, right? So the profile, delicious to our eyes, delicious to our nose, delicious to our taste. That's why we have taste buds. It is not designed with that because that's a nice to have. It is designed with that because it's an essential. And that connection between those things being delivered actually is a key factor in how your satiety hormones work. When they receive something delicious, they turn around and say, ah, I got something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and we all know, like, you know what it's like to take something, like, we'll look at a different category, but to take something that visually is appealing versus something that's visually problematic. Like, you respond to it in a different way.
Sure.
And our hormones are missing the deliciousness signals. So, number one, in order to engage our actual hormones, that's key. Number two, when things are suboptimally delicious, and I give you a scale of 1 to 10, 7 or greater being delicious to you right now, we then enter into the space of fueled but unsatisfied. We may be fueled well, we may be unfueled well. Like, we could have the perfect balance if there was something, such a thing, of macros or of nutrients or whatever. But when we're in suboptimal on deliciousness, that satiety piece dangles out there as not having happened. It's like if you ever played Trivial Pursuit or something else, you're still missing a piece of the pie. Like, it doesn't activate, right? And so in that way, like, it's really important for us to understand that you are more likely to either A, overconsume, because there's this idea that if satiety is correlated to fullness, if you don't feel satisfied, you're less likely to feel full. So we just eat a little bit longer. So we eat more of what we have in front of us. The second thing is, you might have exercised or created a muscle in your body that doesn't exist called willpower. And you might be like, all right, I'm just going to stop. But what happens is you stop without being satisfied. So your brain is still sending signals to satisfy you. So that's like super key to understand. You're more likely to then go looking for the latte, the extra drink, the walk by somewhere, it'd be like the gum or the mint, or I need a little treat, or, something like that. And then the third one in that part is, maybe you don't do that then, but you then go, what ends up happening is you're actually going into your next time that you're eating suboptimally satisfied. And so you go through the same, and over time, your body's going to win out. It's just going to say,
Yeah.
like, I wanted to be satisfied. So a couple of examples of this, and this is like a crazy one that I love to share, because I love when my clients are like, doing the, that when they're such great, like, they're trying so earnestly, or they also, like, you would sometimes think that being a nutritionist is like akin to being a pastor or a priest, in terms of taking confession. Because I had somebody come in the other day and she was like, okay, Ashley, I'm really happy with my results. But I do need to let you know, I know this isn't good, but like the last 2 days, I've literally had like 2 Reese's cups. And then like I've had like some kind of dinner with my kids. And she's like, and it was right after Halloween. She's like, the Reese's cups are in the house. I know I'm bad. I'm not supposed to have them in there, but the kids. And I was like, oh, so you're blaming your kids. Like, okay, like who's running, like who's
And you're
running the house,
judging,
yeah,
and
and you're
you're
judging, like, right. And so, and I'm like, and she's like, and I know Reese's cup, like all these like horrible ingredients and everything else. And I said, no, here's what I want to ask you. I said, so, you're like confessing, like I'm under resort, all this other stuff. I said, number one, what results are you happy with? And she said, well, like, look. And she's like, the number. And I was like, remember, we don't judge happiness. Like, I'm not judging. You don't get a sticker from me or a Reese's cup if your number on the scale. I said, so let's look. And she had actually lost muscle. This wasn't in 2 days. She had been losing muscle. So we're working on it. And I said, and the second thing is, let's talk a little bit about why you're only having, she's like, well, life has been like so crazy, whatever. We went into like how her bowels were doing. And we were also working on her cortisol because she's on an agonist, a GLP-1 agonist on tirzepatide, and her cortisol was higher than I would like it to see. And so I was like, your body is demonstrating to me that it's not getting enough of the safe, like rest and digest, the recovery. And that's going to be a negative for us long term. So like, this is something we were working on correcting. I said, so what I would say is you might be happy with your results. I'm not happy with any of them. So so we're just going to, start there. I actually had a client at my book party last night tell me, he's like, you're the mean one. And I was like, I'm like, relative, aggressive. I was like, I'm honest. I'm like, there's a lot of love here. I was like, but you're paying me. You're paying, and I was like, but you pay me a lot. I was like, all right. So anyway, so I went in and I said, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home and I want you to eat a Reese's. I want you to go home and have the Reese's cup. And she's looking at me and she's like, and I was like, yeah, there's a catch here. And I was like, but I want you to have it. It's like, I want you to do the delicious test. Remember that? And she goes, oh yeah. She's like, don't worry. She's like, what, a Reese's cup? She's like, I think it's so delicious. And I said, okay. It's like, I want you to go home and I want you to go after every bite on a scale of 1 to 10. I was like, and then I want you to drop into our EMR, like if you get through 2 cups, do you get through 4 cups? Like, could you even have 7 or 8? I'm just curious. Like, I was like, I'm just curious. I was like, I want to do this, right? I get home, I get this note, like when I go back into my EMR later and she's like, I hate you. 3 bites into the first cup and it was a 6, basically on that part. And I was like, uh-huh. Because every time I introduce the delicious to me test, I always have people say, well, okay, Ashley, does that mean I get to just eat the fries that I like? Or do I just eat the ice cream? I'm like, no, the point is you can absolutely have those while they're delicious. I was like, there's no question that fries might in the moment be delicious to you. When you take them home and you're still snacking on them, or when you're on like 57, the 57th fry, like it's not still a 7 right on that part. Right. So deliciousness is going to be like a super important, it's an easier tool for us. And I will say that anyone that consumes beverages, and I'm not just talking about alcohol, I'm also talking about mocktail or anything else. Deliciousness is really important on that part.
Sweet tea. You said that
just made you.
I was like, I have to get him up. That's
yes, exactly. And remember, this is one part of like, we still have quality, we still have quantity, so it helps. We still have to use our other principles, but I'm so glad that's the one that you double clicked on because I love talking about deliciousness.
Well, it is so important. And to add to, it might be how many bites in, but often I'm sure you see this even more than I do. So much of it is memory. And so, when people are like, oh, I'm going to have that thing, that I love. And then they're like, wah, wah, it wasn't even that good. And I'm like, because you're not 7 anymore. It's okay. But I think, again, back to nature, right? Like when we were living how we're, and I'm not suggesting, I love having a home. And like yesterday was wicked windy. I'm so grateful. I have a roof and walls, solid, warm place to live and all the things. But we're not eating in a parasympathetic state. But also food was delicious. Like, I my favorite thing I think a client ever said to me, and this was one who fits like literally this conversation because she was in her 60s when we started, and it's all about, and she said, I'm a lifetime member at Weight Watchers, and I'm like, right there's the let's switch that. But I remember when she said, were strawberries always this sweet? She'd been putting sugar on her fruit like forever. And I'm like, like
in my cookbook years ago, I did it's for IBS. And so it was just really to understand how to eat for optimal digestion. And I did a recipe for baked apples. And I went to war with the publisher, with like a couple of chefs. And they're like, there has to be Ashley. And I was like, no, there's spices. There's this. I was like, I did it with water, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm not asking you to have something. And then I took it and I pureed it into applesauce. And I had someone who came to one of my book parties and she was like, legit, this is the best applesauce like I've ever,
And
on
ever.
that part. And I was like, yeah, because
Apple.
applesauce is actually, yeah, and it had the peel in there, it was like, on that part. So I'm like, okay, this is like, we have to remember on that piece that, too often one of the key signals, and I have this is also a lot of it, experiments, tests, quizzes, different, tools. This is a playbook. This is a how book, right? How to do.
Yes.
In here is the sweet taste bud test. And so when you bite into an apple, if it doesn't taste sweet to you, that is actually a very important sign. And it does not mean that you're consuming too much sugar. It could be, but it could actually be that you're consuming non-nutritive sweeteners, and those have amped up, or it could be that your oral microbiome needs attention. It could be that your gut microbiome needs attention. It could be, there's so many different factors. Could be that you're a mouth breather and we want to try some mouth tape. Like, there are all sorts of different things. And when we start to unpack that and we get back to that place, one of my dear friends, Tess Masters, the blender girl, she's a super taster, and she's one of the ones that taught me, because I was like, why are your recipes always like a 10 out of 10 for me? And that's like, I never use superlatives across, like, it's better, not perfect, maybe in the name of my book, but that's it.
Yeah.
Right. But I was like, why is this? And she's like, because I'm obsessed with the dance between, like, so in her strawberry basil smoothie, just start there. She puts a pinch of sea salt, and she explained to me how that worked, right? Or the texture of why she replaced frozen cauliflower, or she put frozen cauliflower into something to give a creaminess. And I was like geeking out. I'm like, there's more potassium than this in it than if somebody had a banana, like that kind of thing, right? And it's like, we like when we look at that, we can lean into, as you said, nature, but we also have to understand it is in our nature, in our design, to satisfy us with deliciousness. Yeah.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, we want to talk more, so I hope you'll come back.
I hope so too. Thank you.
I cannot say enough about the book. I'm so excited about it, because we need it. I mean, we need it, and I can tell listeners, because I say this all the time, like, we're whole, amazing, miraculous, intricate humans, and the things you can walk through in the book and address are going to help inflammation, autoimmunity, all the things, right? It doesn't, and they're all symptoms. It's all signals that the body something is suboptimal. And so I just cannot encourage listeners enough to get the book, and to do the work. Don't get the book and put it on the shelf.
Well, so I had this panic, right? Or it's beautiful, like, get it and put it out there and have things be like beautiful and just a reminder to you. But I would love for you to open it. But I also had a panic as I was writing it, and I realized, like, this is still just me who knows that no book, and I want to be clear, nothing is like, it can be the solution. It can't be the DIY by itself.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what do I do when you're a human who says, like, okay, Ashley, I have this and this, but I also have this. And that's why we as practitioners do what we do. And I love this book for it to be able for you and your practitioner to partner together using it. So, like, get it and give it to your practitioner and say, like, hey, I want to use this. But I did also include in there a QR code. It takes you over to online resources. That's not something novel. It's, things, but it actually brings you into our HIPAA compliant practice management tool. And the reason for that is I wanted to make our coaches accessible. And so I've made our coaches for free, accessible. There is a community. You can ask questions. Now, if you decide you want to invest in something, you can absolutely go do that. Unfortunately, I'm not have the means to, like, just say, go work with anyone forever for free. But that was really important to me, because if you read something and you're in that but why moment, I want you to come in and ask that question. And I also want you to be in a community where we're all together. We're all this little snowball right now. We're going to become a snowman, and then we're going to be an avalanche, and we're going to change the world to a weight healthy world. And in order to do that, we need to take these moments where there's so much nuance in nutrition and weight health. And we need to acknowledge that, and to, like, have our nervous systems actually feel okay when there's nuance, when we actually say, you know what, that is a truth out there, but this is actually what I want you to think about. We need a lot more of that yes and, or what I call better, not perfect mindset, as it comes to it. And that can feel really uncomfortable. And I acknowledge that in a lot of places in the book. So I'm hoping that you take advantage of that, even if you get the book from the library at some point, on that piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things I so appreciate about what you have created before the book, even, the Better Nutrition Program, is you have because I tell people all the time, like you said, it's not a shortage of information,
No, no.
right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes we need
You aren't weight
we
unhealthy
need
because you don't know. Yeah, I love that. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I always say, working with my husband, I always say, okay, the physician is the what to do and the coach is the how
Yes.
to do it. Sometimes we need the how to do it.
Mhm.
And so you provide
Yeah.
all of that within your community, which is amazing.
Mhm.
But even just the gifts to society to have the book out there
Thank
to,
you.
like you said, and sometimes it's a readiness, it's a timing. But also I think nobody will read the book and at the very, very least, even if they're not taking action, they are because they're feeling understood for the first time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's huge. That's the
And
first step.
I challenge anyone to read this book and not laugh at least once. And so I know that you're supporting your vagus nerve or you're exhaling
There
out
you
some of
go.
what the world is putting in. So yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Well, we're at the point where, and I thank you for hanging a little
Mm.
extra with me.
Yeah.
Listeners are leaning in to hear what is Ashley's one step that they can take starting today to start to improve their health or their weight health.
Yeah. I have to lean into assessment. We have to move from the space of thinking or knowing or hearing something and then going and doing it. I mean, I famously, I talk about this all the time. I laugh, but there was a study on prostate, fish oil being bad for prostate health, which ended up being a bad study. So we'll just
Clearly.
acknowledge that, like 15 years ago. And I had all these emails and calls from people being like, you put me on the fish oil or my doctor put me on, what do I do? What do I do? 90% of them were women. I was like, ladies, we don't have prostates, So I think that's that's what I want us to take away is that it is so important to assess before you invest. And that is going to help you avoid. And remember, when we think of investment, we think about money. Your hope, your emotional
Yes.
resources, your time, that is even more important to me. So before you invest in anything, let's look at that for sure.
I love it.
Thank you.
Love it. So go get your best shot. And for people that are listening on the go and aren't going to check the show notes, where is the best place to find you?
Well, okay, so your best shot should exist everywhere. So if it doesn't exist somewhere, then find me. And you can find me. You can pretty much Google or in any social media, just put my name in, Ashley Koff. I think at this point, I don't have anyone faking being me.
No,
so
you
can
pretty out there.
Yeah, there's one Instagram that I don't. I think there's like an Ashley Koff RD that somebody did create. I don't use it, but I think they've still blocked it. But anyway, you can find that or the Better Nutrition Program.
Love it. Amazing. Ashley, thank you so
Thanks for
very
having
much.
me.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.